Yeah.
It was me.
Yeah. Did you ring me last night? Tēnā koe te whare, tēnā koutou te whānau o te whare paramata, tēnā koutou. Members, when we broke for the dinner break, we were debating part 2 of the Taxation, Transformation, First Phase Simplification and Other Measures Bill. Stuart Nash had the call and has 4 minutes 40 seconds remaining, should he wish to avail himself of the opportunity.
Yeah.
Fletcher Tabuto.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr Chairman. I just wanted to touch on a few of the contributions that have been made this evening and acknowledge the kind of issues around the electronic signature problem that the IRD have been working through over the years. And the reality is, in modern practice, and we look to most of our banks at the moment, and we see, there is very much a safe and appropriate mechanism for the electronic signature, and it has taken a while, but we've got there, and I think it's absolutely appropriate, which is part of the reason why New Zealand First is supporting the legislation. But what I did want to touch on in particular, because it is an issue, and it is still, perhaps for me and for New Zealand First, an issue that needs further exploration and some commitment from the Minister, one would hope, around the co-location and the secrecy issue that was raised in terms of discussions within the Select Committee around the... So firstly, let me put it into points. The conversation started with the fact that the IRD was going to have to share locations in terms of physical office space with different departments, government departments, and that would raise some privacy and secrecy issues. I just wanted to note, though, that Inland Revenue considers that no amount of training or best practice guidelines or adopted behaviour is likely to adequately address the substantial risk of Inland Revenue employees inadvertently disclosing taxpayer information to other government employees in the co-location environment. So what we have here is the Ministry itself acknowledging that this is quite a huge problem, and there doesn't seem to be, even with the best of intent, the ability to mitigate, well, maybe mitigate is a possibility, but to eliminate these privacy issues is a real concern for the Ministry itself and the staff involved. So in Select Committee we had very in-depth conversations about what that would involve, and I note Mr Cosgrove made a contribution about that earlier in the evening, and I'd like to support his word because it was a contentious issue. And so what we have done within this legislation is said, well, actually, let's acknowledge that this is a possibility. Let's acknowledge that despite the best efforts of ministry staff, best practice, implementation and procedures, we will have issue. So that's not a debate, and I think that's perhaps the primary concern for New Zealand First. There will be issue. There is no debate on that. It's how we get it around the problem for individual staff. And so with great reluctance as part of that committee, my contribution was to support and say that, yep, let's come up with some additional safeguards for employees so that they would not, if it was proven that they were not deliberately trying to disclose private information, that was unfair and unreasonable to take them to court proceedings if that was established in the first instance. But as that conversation was fleshed out, actually that's what a court is there for. So the court is there to establish the intent and the degree of the intent. And if there was intent, then the court would come down hard and appropriately on those individuals. Conversely, sir, if there was no intent, then the court would establish that. And the argument would be, well, clearly there was no intent, it was a true mistake on behalf of the employee. Why has it come to us let's dismiss it for the accident it was, and yet we have more legislation around this, and I think it is quite an issue that needs further exploration and consideration from the Minister. I think in terms of cost saving, we may have gone a bridge too far in terms of, for the expediency around a few dollars, we're compromising the privacy of New Zealand taxpayers. So it's an important issue that needs, I think, more consideration from the Minister and more from the government. But in the main, when we consider that this is updating, this legislation is about updating the technology and the practices available to the Ministry, I think in the main we can support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Grant Robertson.